Albany, New York. Michael C. McDermott, age 30, of Troy, New York, was sentenced today to 30 months in prison for stealing 6 firearms from a Walmart, a federally licensed firearms dealer. When pleading guilty last October, McDermott admitted to forcing his way into the Walmart in Glen Morn, New York, while it was closed overnight, smashing the glass gun case, and stealing 5 shotguns and 1 rifle. McDermott also admitted that when employees chased him into the woods, he pointed a firearm at them. United States District Judge N.M. Narducci also imposed a 3-year term of supervised release, which includes a special condition of supervision barring McDermott from any association with members, associates, and/or prospects of the Suicide Squad motorcycle gang. The ATF and Bethlehem Police Department investigated the case, which Assistant U.S. Attorney Jonathan S. Rayner prosecuted. Corpus Christi, Texas. A 35-year-old Corpus Christi resident has admitted to being a felon in possession of a firearm, announced U.S. Attorney Alamdar S. Hamdani. Robert Spencer was set to begin trial this week, but has instead opted to enter a guilty plea. On August 4, 2022, authorities responded to a murder reported to have occurred around the 1800 block of Van Loan Avenue in Corpus Christi. They observed Spencer in the area and appeared to be armed. When authorities approached him, Spencer fled into his nearby home, which initiated an hour-long standoff. During that time, Spencer yelled at law enforcement to leave the area. Authorities also heard 2 gunshots. He exited his home without a firearm, at which time, they arrested him. Law enforcement obtained a search warrant for Spencer's residence and discovered 6 pipe bombs, 4 firearms and boxes of ammunition in the attic. He admitted to personally assembling the pipe bombs. As a convicted felon, he is prohibited from possessing firearms or ammunition per federal law. Further testing confirmed the pipe bombs to be destructive devices as the law defines. The pipe bombs were not properly registered to Spencer in the National Firearms Registration and Transfer Record. U.S. District Judge Nelva Gonzalez Ramos will impose sentencing June 4. At that time, Spencer faces up to 15 years in federal prison and a possible $250,000 maximum fine. He will remain in custody pending that hearing. The Corpus Christi Police Department and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives conducted the investigation. Houston. A 24-year-old Houston resident has been indicted on multiple counts of robbery, brandishing a firearm and illegal possession of a firearm, announced U.S. Attorney Alamdar S. Hamdani. Kentrell Tatum is set to appear for his detention hearing before U.S. Magistrate Judge Andrew Edison at 11 a.m. A federal grand jury returned the indictment February 15, which alleges 5 counts of robbery, 4 counts of brandishing a firearm and 1 count of illegal possession of a firearm as a felon. From September 5 to September 11, 2023, Tatum allegedly robbed 5 separate Houston-area Starbucks establishments over the course of 6 days while brandishing a firearm. If convicted, Tatum faces up 20 years in federal prison for each of 5 counts of robbery, while a conviction for being a felon in possession of a firearm carries a possible 10-year prison term. Each of the charges could also result in fines of up to $250,000. He is also charged with 4 counts of brandishing a firearm while committing a crime of violence which carries a mandatory 7 years to be served consecutively to any other prison term imposed. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives conducted the investigation with assistance from the Houston Police Department and Harris County Sheriff's Office. Assistant U.S. Attorney Francisco J. Rodriguez is prosecuting the case. An indictment is a formal accusation of criminal conduct, not evidence. A defendant is presumed innocent unless convicted through due process of law. We really appreciate you guys watching and returning each time to our series of USA violent crime videos. Please subscribe and share to your friends and family below. Laredo, Texas. A 27-year-old Mexican national has been sentenced for holding multiple men against their will and demanding ransom, announced U.S. Attorney Alamdar S. Hamdani. Edgardo Hernandez Zamora pleaded guilty June 8, 2023, to hostage-taking. U.S. District Judge Marina Garcia Marmolejo has now ordered Hernandez Zamora to serve the rest of his life in federal prison. Co-conspirators Adrian Ramirez, 20, and Adrian Ramirez Vasquez, 39, both from Mexico, also pleaded guilty to their roles and previously received 48 and 60 months in prison, respectively. Not U.S. citizens, both men are expected to face removal proceedings following their terms of imprisonment. In February 2023, law enforcement arrived at a residence in Laredo after learning of a potential kidnapping. During their investigation, authorities heard loud banging coming from a window within the home and observed men crying and screaming in Spanish, "They were kidnapping us." Authorities determined the men were being held against their will while Hernandez Zamora communicated with their family members to demand a ransom. Hernandez Zamora threatened to tie the victims up and cause them physical harm and that they would not see their families again if they did not comply. One of the family members paid $3,500 as a partial payment of the ransom demand for their release. Ramirez and Ramirez Vasquez were both found to have conspired with Hernandez Zamora in operating the stash house. Hernandez Zamora has been and will remain in custody pending transfer to a U.S. Bureau of Prisons facility to be determined in the near future. Homeland Security Investigations and Border Patrol conducted the investigation with assistance from the Webb County Constable's Office. Laredo, Texas. A 28-year-old Laredo man is now in custody for allegedly sexually assaulting and violating the civil rights of two women, announced U.S. Attorney Alamdar S. Hamdani. Hector Humberto Rodriguez Jr. is expected to make an initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Diana Song Quiroga at 1:30 p.m. A federal grand jury returned the sealed 5-count indictment February 6, which was unsealed upon his arrest. Rodriguez was a correctional officer with the Webb County Sheriff's Department. On 2 separate occasions, he allegedly deprived 2 women of their civil rights. While working in his law enforcement capacity, he forcibly sexually assaulted both women while they were housed as inmates at the Webb County Jail, according to the indictment. If convicted, he faces up to life in prison as well as potential fines of $250,000 for each of the 5 counts in the indictment. The FBI and Department of Justice, Office of Inspector General conducted the investigation. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Brandon Scott Bowling and Leslie Ann Cortez are prosecuting the case. A federal jury in Brooklyn returned a guilty verdict against Corey Martin on all counts of a superseding indictment charging him with murder for hire conspiracy, wire fraud conspiracy, aggravated identity theft and fraudulent use of identification relating to a scheme to fraudulently obtain life insurance policies in the name of a woman, murder her and collect the insurance proceeds. The verdict followed a 2-week trial before United States District Judge N.M. Donnelly. When sentenced, Martin faces a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment. Breon Peace, United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, James Smith, Assistant Director in Charge, Federal Bureau of Investigation, New York Field Office, FBI, and Edward A. Cabon, Commissioner, New York City. Buffalo, N. White U.S. Attorney Trini E. Ross announced today that James Okolo, 61, of West Orange, New Jersey, who was convicted of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, was sentenced to 12 months in prison by U.S. District Judge John L. Sinatra, Jr. Assistant U.S. Attorney, Michael DiGiacomo, who handled the case, stated that Okolo and others devised a scheme to defraud the Small Business Administration out of over $700,000 in CARES Act money designated for businesses suffering the economic effects caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. The scheme involved the submission of fraudulent economic injury disaster loan applications under the names of various businesses. Okolo's role in the scheme was to find a bank account where the fraudulent loan proceeds were to be deposited. The sentencing is the result of an investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation under the direction of Special Agent in Charge Matthew Miraglia and the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigations, under the direction of Special Agent in Charge Thomas M. Fatoruso. Alexandria, Virginia. A Temple Hills, Maryland man pleaded guilty today to aiding and abetting the straw purchase of 33 guns from Virginia firearms dealers. According to court documents, Melvin Plowden, 34, a convicted felon, arranged for a co-conspirator with no prior felony convictions to purchase firearms on Plowden's behalf, which Plowden resold. Plowden instructed the co-conspirator on which firearms to purchase and gave him money to pay for the firearms. Between October 2019 and June 2020, the co-conspirator purchased 33 firearms from federal firearms dealers in Virginia, all on Plowden's behalf. Of the firearms straw purchased by the co-conspirator, 17 have been recovered in connection with criminal activity or from individuals prohibited from possessing the firearms, including Plowden. In June 2020, Plowden was arrested following an incident in Oxon Hill, Maryland, and one of the straw-purchased firearms was found in his possession. Plowden is scheduled to be sentenced on May 21. He faces a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. A federal district court judge will determine any sentence after considering the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other statutory factors. Jessica D. Haber, U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, and Craig Kylemai, Special Agent in charge of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives Washington Field Division, made the announcement after U.S. District Judge Leonie M. Brinkemer accepted the plea. Assistant U.S. Attorney Christina C. Stam and Megan Braun are prosecuting the case. This case is part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, PSN, a program bringing together all levels of law enforcement and the communities they serve to reduce violent crime and gun violence, and to make our neighborhoods safer for everyone. On May 26, 2021, the Department of Justice launched a violent crime reduction strategy strengthening PSN based on these core principles, fostering trust and legitimacy in our communities, supporting community-based organizations that help prevent violence from occurring in the first place, setting focused and strategic enforcement priorities, and measuring the results. Boston, a Brazilian man who formerly resided in New Bedford was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment today in federal court in Boston for illegal reentry. The defendant is currently serving a sentence imposed in Massachusetts State Court of 25 years life in prison for a 2016 murder conviction. The defendant also was previously convicted of armed assault to murder and domestic assault and battery. Walter Gomes da Silva, 52, was sentenced by U.S. District Court Judge Angel Kelly to 10 years in prison to be served consecutive to his current state sentence of 25 years life in prison for murder. In December 2019, da Silva pleaded guilty in federal court to a one-count of unlawful reentry of a deported alien. This sentence sends the right message to any who think they can violate our immigration laws with impunity and get away with it, said Todd M. Lyons, Field Office Director, Boston, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Removal Operations, ERO, Boston. ERO Boston recognizes and appreciates the commitment of the Office of U.S. Attorney for Massachusetts for its commitment to prosecuting immigration law violators like da Silva, who was previously convicted of murder. Enforcement of federal immigration law increases the protection of public safety and protects our communities from the potential threat posed by individuals like this defendant. Da Silva was first deported from the United States in 1999 after being convicted of domestic assault and battery. Sometime after his removal, da Silva illegally re-entered the United States. In 2002, he was encountered by immigration officials after being charged with armed assault to murder in Middlesex Superior Court. Da Silva was later convicted of that charge and was sentenced to 8 to 10 years in prison. Upon completion of his sentence, da Silva was placed into removal proceedings and was deported again to Brazil in March 2012. Sometime after his 2012 removal, da Silva illegally re-entered the United States a second time. In 2016, da Silva was encountered by immigration officials after being charged with murder in the Bristol Superior Court. Da Silva was later convicted of murder and sentenced to 25 years life in prison. Acting U.S. Attorney Levi and ICE Field Office Director Lyons made the announcement today. Assistant U.S. Attorney Luke A. Goldworm of the Major Crimes Unit prosecuted the case. Man who possessed child sexual abuse material and solicited sexually explicit images from minor children was sentenced today to 20 years in federal prison. Stephen Neidet, age 47, from Dubuque, Iowa, received the prison term after an August 14, 2023, guilty plea to one count of receipt of child pornography. In a plea agreement, Neidet admitted he communicated with an 11-year-old girl in November and December 2017. The communications occurred using an app called AntiChat, which does not automatically retain copies of communications. During those communications, Neidet asked the girl to send him sexually explicit photos, including 2 photos in which the victim was digitally penetrating herself. The victim's mother discovered the communications and reported them to the police. Police officers used Neidet's AntiChat and social media usernames to identify him as the individual communicating with the victim. Pursuant to search warrant, officers searched Neidet's Dubuque home in January 2019. The officers seized numerous electronic devices. Officers discovered thousands of files containing child sexual abuse material on the devices. The files included the explicit images the victim had sent, as well as communications and images Neidet solicited from other minors. Neidet was sentenced in Cedar Rapids by United States District Court Chief Judge C.J. Williams. Neidet was sentenced to 240 months imprisonment. He was ordered to pay $9,000 in restitution. He must also serve a 5-year term of supervised release after the prison term. There is no parole in the federal system. Neidet is being held in the United States Marshal's custody until he can be transported to a federal prison. The case was prosecuted by Assistant United States Attorneys Patrick Reinert and Tony Morfitt and investigated by the Dubuque Police Department, the Manitowoc, Wisconsin, Police Department, and the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation. Houston, a 49-year-old resident of Houston has been convicted of attempted possession with intent to distribute heroin and money laundering, announced U.S. Attorney Alamda Hamdani. A federal jury deliberated for 8 hours before convicting Mohammed Alex Ahmed Qassem following a 4-day trial. Qassem is a former investigator with the Waller County District Attorney's DA office. At the trial, the jury heard how he escorted sham heroin and cartel drug money across state lines. He drove from Louisiana to Houston and Houston to San Antonio in his marked police vehicle on 3 separate occasions for which he was paid a total of $31,000. Testimony further revealed Qassem hid money in his bulletproof vest and disguised the sham heroin in an evidence bag to avoid detection. During the trial, audio and video recordings were presented of each transaction and related text messages. The jury also saw bank records of cash deposits made to Qassem's personal account after each payment. Qassem took the stand in his own defense claiming he had authority to commit these crimes. Qassem also maintained that he received implicit approval from the Waller County DA to conduct undercover investigations as part of his role at the DA's office. However, the jury heard testimony from his former employer which refuted those statements. The jury ultimately did not believe those claims and found him guilty. Alex Qassem was a criminal in disguise. He cloaked himself in his trusted position as a licensed peace officer and Waller County DA investigator while working to enrich himself by shamelessly moving money and drugs in his work vehicle, and hidden in his police vest, said Special Agent in Charge Douglas Williams of the FBI Houston Field Office. Qassem is now a convicted federal felon thanks to the relentless work of FBI Bryan agents and our partners at the Drug Enforcement Administration, DA, who unmasked his corruption and criminal ways. U.S. District Judge Lee Rosenthal presided over the trial and set sentencing for June 13. At that time, Qassem faces up to life in prison for the heroin trafficking conviction and up to 20 years for money laundering. He could also be ordered to pay up to $10 million in fines. Previously released on bond, Qassem was taken into custody following the conviction, where he will remain pending sentencing. The FBI conducted the investigation with the assistance of the DEA. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Carolyn Furco and Heather Winter are prosecuting the case. As we move on to the next crime story, support us by subscribing below. It's absolutely free. Sacramento, California. Sean Jones, 29, of Sacramento, was sentenced today to 7 years in prison for being a felon in possession of a firearm, U.S. Attorney Philip A. Talbot announced. According to court documents, in August 2022, Jones and an associate sold a Glock 17, 9mm gun to an informant working with law enforcement. In September 2023, Jones sold a Glock 17, 9mm gun with an extended magazine to the same informant. Jones is prohibited from possessing firearms because he has previously been convicted of robbery, drug possession, and attempted burglary. This case was the product of an investigation by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Emily G. Sauvageau and Justin Lee prosecuted the case. Albany, New York. Charles E. Williams, age 35, of Albany, was sentenced today to 55 months in prison for possessing a firearm as a previously convicted felon. United States Attorney Carla B. Friedman and United States Marshal David L. McNulty made the announcement. The U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force tracked Williams to a hotel in Albany County to arrest him for a kidnapping. When searching his hotel room on November 18, 2021, deputy marshals found a .357 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver. Williams was prohibited under federal law from possessing the firearm as a result of a prior New York State felony conviction for assault in the first degree. Since committing this federal offense, Williams has also been convicted of additional felonies for kidnapping, robbery, assault and witness intimidation charges in state courts in Albany and Rensselaer counties, and he faces additional armed robbery charges in Albany County. Chief United States District Judge Brenda K. Sands also imposed a 3-year term of supervised release. The U.S. Marshals Service investigated the case with assistance from the North Greenbush Police Department and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jonathan S. Rayner prosecuted the case. Maybe now is a good time to like, share and subscribe below. Albany, New York. Rylan Peterson, age 22, of Kingston, New York, pled guilty on Wednesday to conspiring with others to unlawfully obtain firearms from a licensed dealer by making false statements, also known as straw purchasing firearms, and to unlawfully transferring firearms to an out-of-state resident. United States Attorney Carla B. Friedman and John B. DeVito, special agent in charge of the New York Field Division of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, made the announcement. Peterson, a native of Kingston, then serving as a private first class in the Marine Corps at a base in North Carolina, admitted that he entered into an agreement with Orrin McLeod for Peterson to acquire 6 semi-automatic handguns on behalf of McLeod and others. Peterson then obtained the guns from North Carolina resident Mitchell Locke, who purchased them from a licensed dealer in North Carolina, falsely representing at the time of the purchase that he was acquiring the firearms for himself. McLeod paid Peterson for the guns, which Peterson transported to New York from North Carolina. McLeod was subsequently arrested for unlawful possession of 2 of the handguns. Sentencing is scheduled for July 10, 2024, before Senior United States District Judge Lawrence E. Kahn. Peterson faces up to 25 years in prison, a fine of up to $250,000, and a term of supervised release of 5 years. A defendant's sentence is imposed by a judge based on the particular statute the defendant is charged with violating, the U.S. sentencing guidelines and other factors. McLeod has pled guilty to conspiracy to make false representations in connection with purchasing firearms. Locke is pending trial on the same charge. The charges against Locke are merely accusations, and he is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. ATF and the Kingston Police Department are investigating this case. Assistant U.S. Attorneys Dustin C. Segovia and Emmett O'Hanlon are. This case was prosecuted under the new criminal provisions of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. The act is the first federal statute specifically designed to target the unlawful trafficking and straw purchasing of firearms. At the federal courthouse in Central Islip, Quincy Homier was sentenced by United States District Judge Gary R. Brown to 18 years in prison for his role as the mastermind of a November 9, 2015 armed takeover bank robbery of a Wells Fargo bank branch in Hempstead, New York, which netted Homier and his co-conspirators more than $375,000 in proceeds. Homier pleaded guilty in December 2017 to armed. Breon Pease, United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, James Smith, Assistant Director in Charge, Federal Bureau of Investigation, New York Field Office, FBI, and Patrick J. Ryder, Commissioner, Nassau County Police Department, NCPD, announced the sentence. Homier has been held accountable for committing a violent bank robbery while brandishing an assault rifle, terrorizing the employees and customers, including an elderly woman and young child, actions that easily could have resulted in the loss of life either inside the bank or to the brave responding officers, stated United States Attorney Pease. Homier has now learned that the true payoff for robbing a bank is a long-term stay in prison. Mr. Pease thanked the Hempstead Police Department and the Suffolk County Police Department for their assistance on the case. The sentencing of defendant Quincy Homier for an armed robbery in Hempstead should set an example to anyone considering a similar crime that law enforcement and its partners will never stop, and will continue with their investigations until the subjects are apprehended. Our communities are safer with defendant Homier incarcerated. Congratulations to all the dedicated investigators and their agencies for a job well done, stated NCPD Commissioner Ryder. On November 9, 2015, following extensive planning, Homier and his co-conspirators, including Anil Saintville, executed the robbery of a Wells Fargo bank branch on Fulton Avenue in Hempstead, New York. Homier entered the bank brandishing an AK-47 rifle accompanied by 3 armed co-conspirators, while a 4th co-conspirator stood guard. An armed takeover of the bank ensued. Tellers and customers, including an 8-year-old boy, were zip-tied and held captive, as the bank's vault was emptied of over $375,000. A 5th co-conspirator monitored encrypted NCPD police radio frequencies in an effort to facilitate the defendant's escape. Homier was unaware that a teller had placed a wireless GPS tracker with the stolen money. Hempstead Police Department officers initiated a chase of the getaway vehicle that ended with the arrest of one of the co-conspirators that day and recovery of most of the bank proceeds. In November 2016, Homier was arrested in Miami, Florida, following an investigation by the FBI, NCPD, and SCPD. Co-defendant Saintville was arrested in December 2016 by members of the FBI and SCPD. In January 2018, Saintville was convicted by a federal jury of conspiracy to commit armed bank robbery and brandishing firearms during a crime of violence. He was sentenced on February 26, 2020 to 219 months imprisonment for his role as a lookout in the robbery. A federal jury in Brooklyn returned a guilty verdict against Carl Jordan, Jr., and Ronald Washington for the October 30, 2002, murder of Jason Mizell, also known as Jam Master Jay, a member of the famed hip-hop group Run DMC. Both defendants were charged with murder while engaged in a narcotics trafficking conspiracy and firearm-related murder for the fatal shooting of Mizell inside the victim's recording studio in Hollis, Queens. The verdict followed a 4-week trial before United States District Judge LaShawn D'Orsay Hall. When sentenced, Jordan and Washington face a minimum of 20 years imprisonment and a maximum term of life imprisonment. More than 2 decades after they killed Jason Mizell in his recording studio, Jordan and Washington have finally been held accountable for their cold-blooded crime driven by greed and revenge, stated United States Attorney Pease. That the victim, professionally known as Jam Master Jay, was a hip-hop icon, and Run DMC's music was born in Hollis, Queens, in this very district, and beloved by so many, adds to the tragedy of a life senselessly cut short. I thank the jurors for their service, and I commend our prosecutors, the NYPD detectives, both active and retired, and the special agents and investigators from the ATF and my office, for their relentless pursuit of justice for the victim, his family, and the community. Mr. Peace also expressed his thanks to the NYPD intelligence. Guilty verdicts provides proof that the passage of time provides no safe harbor to those who commit murder. For us in ATF, our memory is long, and our resolve is steadfast. We have no tolerance for those who would take a life, and we are committed to seeing justice done. We thank our partners who are part of ATF NY Joint Firearms Task Force, Long Island, NYPD, U.S. Marshals and the U.S. Attorney's Office of Eastern District of NY who share the same commitment and resolve. We offer our hope to the family, friends, and fans of Jason Mizell that today's verdict gives some closure, stated ATF Special Agent in Charge DeVito. In every homicide investigation, NYPD detectives are meticulous, patient, and tireless in their efforts to help secure guilty verdicts like these rendered. As proven at trial, between the 1990s and 2002, separate from his music career, Mizell was involved in arranging for the sale of kilogram quantities of cocaine in the Eastern District of New York and elsewhere. In August 2002, Mizell acquired approximately 10 kilograms of cocaine on consignment from a supplier based in California. The cocaine was intended to be distributed in Maryland by Washington, Jordan, and other co-conspirators. A dispute between Washington and one of the co-conspirators in Baltimore resulted in Mizell cutting Washington and Jordan out of the Maryland drug deal worth almost $200,000. Following this betrayal, Washington and Jordan continued in the larger narcotics conspiracy until they could ultimately cut out Jason Mizell by murdering him on October 30, 2002. On Wednesday, October 30, 2002, Mizell was present at his recording studio, 24/7, located on Merrick Boulevard in Jamaica, Queens, playing a video game with a friend and reviewing paperwork with his business manager. At approximately 7:30 p.m., the defendant's co-conspirator opened a locked fire escape exit door allowing Washington and Jordan to enter the building without being seen by Mizell. Jordan, who was the victim's godson, and Washington went upstairs to the recording studio where Jordan greeted Mizell, who was sitting on the couch and initially appeared happy to see him. Things turned quickly, with Jordan pointing a gun at Mizell and firing 2 shots at close range. One shot hit Mizell in the head, killing him instantly. The second shot struck Mizell's friend in the leg, and Mizell's business manager identified Washington as being present in the recording studio during the murder and pointing a firearm at her and ordering her to get down on the floor. The co-conspirator who allowed the defendants to enter through the fire escape door will be tried separately for his role in Mizell's murder in January 2026 and remains innocent until proven guilty. Jordan is also charged with conspiracy to distribute cocaine and cocaine distribution and will be tried on those counts at a later date. Thank guys, we appreciate you so much, keep watching and sharing our videos. A federal jury in Brooklyn returned a guilty verdict against Carl Jordan, Jr., and Ronald Washington for the October 30, 2002, murder of Jason Mizell, also known as Jam Master Jay, a member of the famed hip-hop group Run DMC. Both defendants were charged with murder while engaged in a narcotics trafficking conspiracy and firearm-related murder for the fatal shooting of Mizell inside the victim's recording studio in Hollis, Queens. The verdict followed a 4-week trial before United States District Judge LaShawn D'Orsary Hall. When sentenced, Jordan and Washington face a minimum of 20 years imprisonment and a maximum term of life imprisonment. Breon Peace, United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, Edward A. Cabon, Commissioner, New York City Police Department, NYPD. More than 2 decades after they killed Jason Mizell in his recording studio, Jordan, and Washington have finally been held accountable for their cold-blooded crime driven by greed and revenge, stated United States Attorney Peace. That the victim, professionally known as Jam Master Jay, was a hip-hop icon and Run DMC's music was born in Hollis, Queens, in this very district, and beloved by so many, adds to the tragedy of a life senselessly cut short. I thank the jurors for their service, and I commend our prosecutors, the NYPD detectives, both active and retired, and the special agents and investigators from the ATF and my office, for their relentless pursuit of justice for the victim, his family, and the community. The guilty verdicts provides proof that the passage of time provides no safe harbor to those who commit murder. For us in ATF, our memory is long, and our resolve is steadfast. We have no tolerance for those who would take a life, and we are committed to seeing justice done. We thank our partners who are part of ATF NY Joint Firearms Task Force, Long Island, NYPD, U.S. Marshals and the U.S. Marshals and the U.S. Attorney's Office of Eastern District of NY who share the same commitment and resolve. We offer our hope to the family, friends, and fans of Jason Mizell that today's verdict gives some closure, stated ATF Special Agent in charge DeVito. In every homicide investigation, NYPD detectives are meticulous, patient, and tireless in their efforts to help secure guilty verdicts. Fort Myers, Florida, U.S. District Judge Thomas P. Barber has sentenced Gavin Michael Harold, 23, Naples, to 6 years and 6 months in federal prison for possession of images and videos depicting the sexual abuse of children. Harold was also sentenced to a lifetime of supervised release and ordered to register as a sex offender. Harold had entered a plea of guilty on November 29, 2023. According to court documents, between December 2022 through January 2023, an FBI task force agent using a peer-to-peer file sharing program connected to Harold's computer and downloaded files depicting a child engaged in sexually explicit conduct. On March 20, 2023, the FBI executed a search warrant at Harold's residence in Naples, Florida, and seized Harold's laptop computer. A subsequent forensic examination of Harold's laptop computer revealed in excess of 8,500 images and 450 videos depicting the sexual abuse of young children. On March 20, 2023, during an interview with agents, Harold admitted that he had been downloading child pornography for a while. Harold told the agents that he did not let anyone use his laptop and told agents where he stored his collection on his laptop. This case was investigated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Fort Myers Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force, which includes the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, which assisted with this investigation. It was prosecuted by Assistant United States Attorney Yolanda G. Viacava. This is another case brought as part of Project Safe Childhood, a nationwide initiative launched in May 2006 by the Department of Justice to combat the growing epidemic of child sexual exploitation and abuse. Led by the United States Attorney's Offices and the Criminal Division's Child Exploitation and Obscenity Section. United States Attorney Susan Lair announced that Thomas Yanes, 29, of Omaha, Nebraska, was sentenced on February 29, 2024, in federal court in Omaha for possessing child pornography. United States District Court Judge Brian C. Bisher sentenced Jane to 120 months imprisonment. There is no parole in the federal system. After Yane's release from prison, he will begin a 10-year term of supervised release. Yanes was on supervised release following his release from prison for a previous child pornography possession offense when his probation officer developed suspicion Yanes was using an unapproved internet-connected device. A search was executed at his home and his electronic devices were later forensically searched, revealing Yanes was in possession of child pornography. Baltimore, Maryland, Devon Tremont Dorsey, age 30, of Gwynn Oak, Maryland pleaded guilty on March 1, 2024, to carjacking and to using, carrying, and possessing a firearm during a crime of violence. Dorsey also admitted that he and other conspirators kidnapped victims and attempted to rob them, using force and threats of force. The guilty plea was announced by United States Attorney for the District of Maryland Eric L. Barron, acting special agent in charge, Joseph Rothrock of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Baltimore Field Office, Commissioner Richard Worley of the Baltimore Police Department, Chief Robert McCullough of the Baltimore County Police Department, Harford County Sheriff Jeffrey R. Garler, and Harford County State's Attorney Allison Healy. According to his plea agreement, in May and August 2021, Dorsey and other conspirators planned to impersonate police officers to stop vehicles, carjack and abduct victims, and use force and threats of force to steal cash. Dorsey and other conspirators posed as police officers, using police vests, badges, and a law enforcement type light bar, to stop the victims and their vehicles, and brandished firearms and a blowtorch during the kidnappings. As detailed in the plea agreement, on May 15, 2021, driving a Ford Fusion with police-style lights, Dorsey and other members of the conspiracy drove to Edgewood, Maryland to abduct and rob J.H. Dorsey, and the others were wearing police-style vests with "police" written on them, masks, and gloves. Around midnight on May 15 to 16, 2021, J.H. left Edgewood, driving a 2022 Toyota Camry. The members of the conspiracy used the police-style lights to stop J.H.'s vehicle. Dorsey and the conspirators, armed with firearms, approached J.H.'s car and identified themselves as police. The conspirators told J.H. that he had an outstanding warrant, and that he was under arrest. The conspirators put J.H. in handcuffs, put duct tape over his eyes and mouth, bound his feet, and put him in the back of their vehicle. J.H. was then driven away in the Ford Fusion with two of the conspirators, while two other members of the conspiracy followed in J.H.'s Camry. While J.H. was in the Ford Fusion, the conspirators demanded $10,000, told J.H. that they knew where he lived and that they would kill his parents if he did not cooperate. One of the conspirators used a blowtorch to burn J.H.'s chest multiple times when J.H. did not answer questions. The conspirators took J.H.'s necklace, wallet, phone, and car keys. After more than 5 hours of driving and demanding money, the conspirators released J.H. in Baltimore City at approximately 5:20 a.m. Further, Dorsey admitted that on August 2, 2021, he and two co-conspirators approached victim AK as she left the check cashing business where she worked. The conspirators, wearing police vests and badges, brandished firearms to kidnap victim AK and placed her into the rear of one of their vehicles equipped with law enforcement type lights. The driver was holding a blowtorch with a blue fuel canister, and AK observed a bottle of bleach on the floor in the back of the car. After AK entered the vehicle, the men bound AK's wrists behind her back with zip ties and used black duct tape to affix a blindfold over her eyes. One of the men stated to AK, "We don't burn sisters." According to the plea agreement, while in the vehicle, the men took AK's wallet, phone, and keys, which included the keys to the check cashing business. The men demanded that AK provide access to the check cashing business, including demanding the AK provide the men with access codes, safe codes, and the amount of money in the safe at the business. The men demanded information from AK for nearly 6 hours, then released AK in Edmondson Village in Baltimore City at approximately 1 a.m. Before they drove away, the men instructed AK not to remove her face covering until they had driven away. Dorsey and the government have agreed that, if the court accepts the guilty plea, a sentence of 15 years in federal prison is the appropriate disposition of the case. U.S. District Judge Matthew J. Maddox has scheduled sentencing for June 10, 2024, at 10 a.m. This case is part of Project Safe Neighborhoods, PSN, a program bringing together all levels of law enforcement and the communities they serve to reduce violent crime and make our neighborhoods safer for everyone. Springfield, Missouri. A Joplin, Missouri, man has been charged in federal court with receiving and distributing child pornography. Reagan Elijah Alexa Garcia, also known as Elijah Hicklin, 22, was charged in a criminal complaint filed in the U.S. District Court in Springfield on Thursday, February 29, with one count of receiving and distributing child pornography. Garcia remains in federal custody pending a detention hearing on Tuesday, March 5. According to an affidavit filed in support of the federal criminal complaint, an FBI task force officer on the FBI's Child Exploitation Task Force in Washington, D.C., entered a private kick group known as a place where people meet, discuss, and trade original images and videos of children. On January 13, 2024, a user later identified as Garcia entered the group and engaged the undercover officer in a private chat. Garcia told the undercover officer that he had pornographic images he produced himself, the affidavit says, including images of a 3-year-old child victim that he sent to the undercover officer. Garcia also sent an image of child pornography to the undercover officer that he claimed was produced by giving the child sleeping pills. On February 21, 2024, Garcia allegedly sent multiple files of child pornography to the undercover officer. According to the affidavit, a child in one of those images is depicted with various restraint devices. In the text conversation, Garcia told the undercover officer that he had sexually assaulted a female child within the past couple of days. On February 28, 2024, law enforcement officers executed a search warrant at Garcia's residence. When an FBI agent began patting down Garcia, he began actively resisting. Garcia refused to put his hands behind his back and was taken to the ground, with his hands and arms underneath him. He repeatedly refused to obey commands to put his arms behind his back. Multiple law enforcement officers assisted to force Garcia's hands and arms behind his back and place him in handcuffs. Multiple broken pieces of a microSD card, which Garcia later admitted to destroying, were found in the area where the struggle with Garcia occurred. The FBI is asking for the public's assistance regarding the ongoing investigation into Garcia. The charge contained in this complaint is simply an accusation, and not evidence of guilt. Evidence supporting the charge must be presented to a federal trial jury, whose duty is to determine guilt or innocence. This case is being prosecuted by Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephanie Wan. It was investigated by the FBI. Rapid City, United States Attorney Allison J. Ramsdell announced that a jury has convicted Wilbur Morrison, Jr., age 36, of Porcupine, South Dakota, of 2 counts of aggravated sexual abuse of a minor and 1 count of assault resulting in serious bodily injury following a 2-day jury trial in Federal District Court in Rapid City, South Dakota. The verdict was returned on February 28, 2024. The charges carry a mandatory minimum of 30 years up to life in custody and or a $250,000 fine, up to life on supervised release, and a $300 special assessment to the Federal Crime Victims Fund. Morrison was indicted by a federal grand jury in May of 2023. Morrison sexually abused a juvenile female on the evening of January 12, 2023, near Porcupine. This abuse was witnessed by 2 juvenile males. As a result of sexual abuse committed by Morrison, syphilis, a sexually transmitted disease, was transmitted to the juvenile female victim. This case was investigated by the Oglala Sioux Tribe Department of Public Safety and the FBI. Assistant U.S. Attorney Megan Popham prosecuted the case. A pre-sentence investigation was ordered and a sentencing date has been set for May 17, 2024. The defendant was remanded to the custody of the U.S. Marshals Service. San Juan, Puerto Rico. Eduardo Luis Moreno Casanova, 53, a religious leader in K, was sentenced on February 27, 2024, by Chief Judge Raul M. Arias Marxuak, to 240 months of imprisonment for 2 counts of production of child pornography. According to court documents, from December 2022 through January 25, 2023, Moreno Casanova used a cellular phone, as well as Internet instant messaging services, to knowingly persuade, induce, entice, and coerce two 15-year-old male minors to engage in sexual activity for which any person can be charged with a criminal offense, which includes the production of child pornography as defined in Title 18, United States Code. Also, Maria Casanova did knowingly employ, use, persuade, induce, entice, and coerce a minor, and attempted to engage in sexually explicit conduct for the purpose of producing any visual depiction of such conduct. In a separate case, Alexander Joel Rivera Santos, from Salinas, PR, was sentenced by Senior Judge Francisco A. Bisosa on February 9, 2024, to 51 months in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release for possession of child exploitation material, in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 2252A, A, 5b. According to court documents, an investigation from HSI Phoenix into chat rooms utilizing the Viber chat application to exchange child pornography identified users who were members of a chat that was exchanging child pornography. Several users' numbers were affiliated with phone numbers from Puerto Rico. Those numbers were referred to HSI San Juan for further investigation. An open-source database search revealed that one of the cellular phone numbers identified as a known member of those chat rooms was being used by Rivera Santos. The results of the investigation revealed that from on or about May 6, 2021, through on or about June 24, 2022, Rivera Santos, using a cell phone device which had internet capabilities, knowingly possessed, and accessed with intent to view, material containing images of child pornography, that is, sexually explicit images of minors and minors engaging in sexual acts, including images of prepubescent minors or minors who had not attained 12 years of age. Attorney W. Stephen Muldrow of the District of Puerto Rico, and Rebecca Gonzalez Ramos, Special Agent in charge of Homeland Security Investigations, made the announcement. Homeland Security Investigations investigated the case. Salt Lake City, Utah. Michael Austin Ford, 58, of West Valley City, Utah, a former Granite School District bus driver, was ordered detained March 1, 2024, by a United States magistrate judge after he was accused of setting the school bus on fire on 2 occasions. Ford was indicted by a federal grand jury on February 21, 2024, for 2 alleged incidents of arson while driving the bus. According to court documents, in February 2022, Ford allegedly set a Granite School District school bus on fire that had 42 children inside and did so while driving in traffic. As alleged in court documents, Ford used an ignition device to start a fire on the bus and was captured on video continuing to drive the bus, despite smoke billowing past his face towards the back of the bus where children were seated. In April 2023, Ford was again driving a Granite School District bus in traffic when he was captured on video igniting a fire on the bus. Again, Ford continued to drive the bus with smoke billowing past his face. Days later, in April 2023, Ford was arrested by Granite School Police and questioned about the fire but was released. Ford is charged with 2 counts of arson of a vehicle of an organization receiving federal funds. A jury trial is scheduled for April 29, 2024, at 8:30 a.m. in courtroom 8.3 before a U.S. District Court judge at the United States District Courthouse. San Diego. A superseding indictment was partially unsealed in the Southern District of California today, charging Benjamin Madrigal Birrueta, an alleged drug trafficker, with murdering 2 people to prevent them from testifying in drug trafficking prosecutions that were pending in federal court in San Diego. The victims were identified as Cesar Armando Murillo, 44, and Mayra Sofia Hernandez, 33. Residents of Yakima, Washington. Court filings indicate Hernandez was 6 months pregnant when she was killed, and the superseding indictment includes a separate count charging Madrigal Birrueta with the death of her in utero child. The cartels and drug trafficking organizations have reached beyond our borders, bringing their criminality to every city and small town in our interior, said Special Agent in Charge Robert Hammer, who oversees HSI operations in the Pacific Northwest. The murder of witnesses is an affront to our rule of law, but HSI, along with our law enforcement partners, have the resources to uncover these horrible crimes and the dedication to dismantle the organizations harming our population, wherever they may be located. HSI continues to tirelessly investigate criminal organizations who traffic dangerous drugs across our border and into the interior of the United States. In this pursuit, we will ensure that anyone who is responsible for causing harm to a witness in one of our investigations is held accountable for these actions, said HSI San Diego SAC Chad Plants. Fear or harm caused to those who report a crime or testify diminishes the public's trust in the criminal justice system and erodes the foundation of the rule of law. HSI and its partners are committed to ensuring that anyone who tampers with witnesses or breaks the laws in place to protect them are brought to justice. The superseding indictment also charges Ricardo Orizaba with being an accessory after the fact to murder. Court filings indicate both victims were buried in a remote high-desert location near Yakima and that these charges follow a year-long search culminating in the discovery of their remains in September 2023. Hernandez is survived by her 3 minor children and Murillo is survived by 2 minor children. The superseding indictment alleges defendant Madrigal Biruita was a leader in a criminal enterprise that committed a series of felony violations of federal drug laws. According to court filings, the investigation originated with the seizure of drugs from vehicles using San Diego area ports of entry between August and October of 2021. The organization used late-model stolen vehicles to smuggle drugs. The superseding indictment alleges that Madrigal Biruita is responsible for the importation of those drugs. According to court filings, by August of 2022, the investigation led agents to a group of individuals operating out of Yakima. Special agents with Homeland Security investigations interviewed Murillo and Hernandez, and within days of those interviews, Murillo and Hernandez were murdered and their bodies were buried in the high desert. Court filings describe how these charges follow an exhaustive, year-long investigation that employed geophysicists, ground-penetrating radar, aircraft, laser imaging, chemical testing of the soil, numerous cadaver dogs, and other law enforcement techniques to search for the victims' remains. HSI special agents successfully recovered the remains on September 13, 2023, aided by a Washington State Police crime scene investigations team. Court filings further indicate that, based on autopsy reports, both victims died of multiple gunshot wounds to the head. In addition to the homicides, the superseding indictment charges Madrigal Biruita with possessing a machine gun in furtherance of a drug trafficking crime. Federal courts in California and Washington state have ordered that Madrigal Biruita and Orizaba be detained pending trial, and both are in custody. It's been a pleasure having you guys watching and sharing our crime videos on Crime Vlog Weekly. Maybe now is a good time to subscribe below absolutely free of charge.